This is the post lunch and pre snack session. So it's right in the middle. I'll try and keep my section short so we can go over to the very interesting panel which we have here. Will AI take over the world and all of our jobs? We may not be able to answer that question, but I just wanted to throw it there so we have some of your attention. We had in fact started with this question, and then what we realized is this AI is part of a repeating pattern of technology transformations which we have seen over the years. In fact, if we look in the rearview mirror, there have been multiple revolutions and transformations, and there have been winners in each of them. And the winners have had very definite advantages which they have taken over. So for example, in the late 18th and early 19th century, it was the Industrial Revolution, and UK was the undisputed leader. We also had Germany and United States, which followed closely. After that, we had the electricity and mass production era, assembly lines, automobiles, and telecommunication. And this is where US started to take the lead with companies like Ford and General Electric, and Germany and Japan were other industrial powerhouses. Moving over closer to the 20th century, we had the digital era, and this is where US, and specifically the Silicon Valley in US, really stood apart and took the lead with companies like Microsoft, Apple, Intel, and Japan and South Korea excelled in hardware manufacturing side of it. After that, of course, there was the internet and connectivity era, World Wide Web, e-commerce, mobile. Again, the US continued to lead this with huge giants which are so ubiquitous in our lives. Amazon, Facebook, Google, all of them emerged. And this is also where we saw China really stepping up with players like Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu, and all of them also coming up. After that, we have had the cloud and big data era, where again, US and China have really led. And now we keep hearing AI, but it's what I would like to phrase it as the AI and automation era, where it's really all the automation and technologies which are happening. And I think the question which we're trying to answer in some way here is who will emerge as a winner out of this? What is really needed to win at both, of course, at a country level, but also at an institution and an individual level. Across all of these eras, what we see there are few common themes, and we'll explore as we talk to all the panelists here, of adaptability, how much investments you're doing in education and R&D, what's the infrastructure which you are really building up, how inclusive is your progress, and how are you really collaborating between public and private entities. I think here also with some of the recent reports, I know there's been a lot of hype about DeepSeek and what part of it is true, what's not true, was it really that low cost investment, etc. Without getting into the specifics of one example, I think the larger question is this AI and automation era, what is really needed to try and capture it? How do we make sure that we don't go obsolete? How are we able to upskill ourselves? And then how do we really move ahead to capture this opportunity? I think in that context, really trying to answer this question, I would like to start with Professor Pankaj. Why don't you come and share your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Anurag, for that very nice setup and introduction to the way things are shaping and actually have shaped over the last many centuries and generations. You rightly said that any technological innovation opens up the possibility for some societies to get ahead. And that's true. That is true. Every technology that has come about has led some people to move forward. Who moves forward and who doesn't? That's a question that I thought about quite a bit. The answer, which I have tried to offer to many of these innovations that are now happening, that have the potential to move some societies leap forward, is the idea of purpose. And what I offer is that what we often think is a technological revolution is actually a revolution in human purpose. No technology is devoid of a purpose. But it is complex for an individual, for an organization, or generally for any society to understand the purpose. And so the real idea that I often talk about is what drives one society forward is the idea of purpose, but what is purpose? And I ask you in the next few minutes to think about these three things when you think purpose. The first thing that, we as society, we as individuals, we as homemakers or whoever we are, whatever identity we presume, the first thing we have to think about is the idea of technology itself. The second is the logic of human organization. And the third is individual. So we've talked a lot about, in many of the sessions today we've heard a lot of discussion about digital technology as the way forward. And again, the presumption or the underlying idea that I'm going to say is that we will move forward only if we clearly identify this purpose. Three things you need to think about. First is the idea of technology itself. Technologies are going to get advanced. You mentioned, Anurag, about DeepSeek, and we've heard ChatGPT and many other models. And again, India is saying that we will build ours too. The deep or advanced technology will continue to drive the human purpose. Now, these are some examples that I think many of you are familiar with. The technologies such as through Google in the previous era, or ChatGPT or DeepSeek and Perplexity and many others that are now coming, have great ability to do things that seem very, very human in nature. For example, write mournful poems. If Google fed a lot of books to its AI and was able to create poems that were really, really sad, which means that they will make you get a human experience, much like you would get from a human writing such a piece of text. We all know about ChatGPT. We've heard a lot, MSMEs and many other contexts. We're talking about IoTs. We're talking about automation. We're talking about the automation of processes, which if you dig a little deeper into it, and if computer happens to be the real big technology on which most of the work happens, and if you can automate it, that's doing a lot of intelligent things. If we think humans are intelligent, and actually we do, and separate a lot of people based on their intelligence. So the first idea is that technologies are becoming big, but it's not just US or it's not just the Western countries that are doing that. In India also, we are talking a lot of complex technologies, and there are things like Aadhaar and UPI we often talk about, but beyond that, we are now talking about humanoid robots of different type that we are building. So it's not some phenomena that we can watch from a distance, which we've done in many of the technology transformation. It's not something that as a society, as individuals, as professionals, as managers, engineers, you have or we have the luxury to wait and watch. It's already happening right here in India as well. A lot of different advanced technologies being built. What is more interesting and what is more important for us to think is what happens in the next 10 years. When you are running in a race, the current position, sure, it may be wherever it is, but real fun will be where we will be in the next 10 to 15 years. Or, and if we think or take this perspective of technology, where technology will be in the next 10 to 15 years, and the way to project that is to just go back in time. Where technology was 20 years, 30 years in the past, and where it is today. And if you do that comparison, the kind of technology you have in your hand, your mobile phones, have much more computing power than the power of a supercomputer in 60s and 70s. Just imagine what is likely to happen 20 years from now. People usually say that the computing power doubles every 2 years. Do you know what happens in 20 years if you use that doubling rate? It will be 1,000,000 times more than today. 1,000,000 times more. And if you want to get a perspective of what 1,000,000 times means, do you want to think what is the times that a jet plane flies faster than walking? How much multiple that would be? You want to guess? Only 100 times. You're talking 1,000,000 times versus 100 times. Imagine the computational abilities you will have in your hand 20 years from now, and what those capabilities can do. Somebody like Elon Musk may put them in a chip in your head, but the idea is that there will be computing capabilities that will far, far overpower any potential imagination you may have of what intelligent person means. That's where the future is going. If you're talking that computing rates, there is a lot of good that can happen. There is a lot of good things that people are now thinking of using that computations for. The idea is that, we will talk about this much more, but computing capabilities have been used to do a lot of good things. And the second element that you have to think about when you think, what do we do with this tremendous computational capabilities? What do we do with these advanced technologies? Is to think organization. Now, when I say organization, I know we've talked about, and a lot of people in the panel talk in different ways, MSMEs and large companies and tech, and we separate it in different ways. But when I talk organization, and I have a liberty to do so as an academic a bit more than others, I say organization is the fundamental act of living beings. We all organize. The only thing that distinguishes a living being from a non-living being is organization. Somebody was talking I think we heard in the previous session about ants with much limited neuroscientific capabilities doing the kind of things they do. Organization is something that is seen on this planet across all living species. Birds organize, make nests to grow up their families. We right now are organized in this room to learn and talk about digital transformation and technology resilience. Right? In your homes, we organize. In our lives, we organize. In your desk, you are organized. On your work, you are organized. Everything that a human being, we being more complex and restricting to human organization, everything we ever do is organizing. If I take organizing as an act, living beings organize. So if you think that fundamentally, technology has a great amount of role to play in helping us organize, because organizations are very essential for our well-being. And there are different ways these technologies and these tremendous computational capabilities will help us organize much better. There are already examples of people using flu trends on Google searches to predict the advent of flu much sooner than the data that comes from the public health agencies. If you are typing in the symptoms, okay, I am suffering from this, people are able to mine that search trends to say that this area is likely to now get a flu in the next 2 days or so. Because that has already come, it's just not been detected by the public health agencies. It's not just being reported, but people are reporting it as they search for symptoms on Google search. That's just one example, very simple example of how people are trying to make public health or solve public health problems. There are many other ways. In my own field of education, AI is being used to detect the kind of deficiency a student may have by mining the data across different courses. So if a student is regularly performing badly in, let's say, a physics and a math course, it is very hard for teachers in the school to identify the reason for the student not doing well in certain topics. Come in AI, and it is able to detect that one principle, let's say for an example, the student does not understand very well is quadratic equation, just to say for an example. Now suddenly that piece of intelligence is not something that is even discernible by a professor or a faculty, because they are only analyzing the data from their own course. Now this AI can analyze the data from student deficiencies across different courses and the student performance across these different courses to analyze the reason, which is a very hidden and a latent reason. So tremendous ability for computational capabilities to help us educate and organize ourselves to educate better. Columbia University has kind of used robots to set up experiments, just like a research assistant would. So it's not just limited to very small things. Even advanced things such as discovery and enablement of science, which we organize as a society, is being shaped by the computational capabilities that are arising. We're talking in future about autonomous cars. We're talking about, we had an incident in India where a couple of miners were stuck under mines, and the whole country is very concerned and influenced and hurt by what might have happened to them. Why do we need to send miners in these mines? There are tasks that are dangerous. In the next few years, do we really need to have these tasks? I know we talk about jobs and displacement of jobs, and I'll come back to that. But there are certain things that humans don't want to do or should not be doing just because they may be too dangerous for humans to do. Do we as society think that we need to organize ourselves slightly differently than we've always done? There are real challenges. And these are some anecdotes or examples I've given. But there are real challenges people and societies are worried about. Eric Brynjolfsson, who is a professor at MIT, analyzed a large bunch of data, and he finds that there is a decoupling. There is a decoupling between jobs and productivity. And the idea there is that I can create a lot of different things now by employing fewer people. So organizations don't need so many people. It's a real concern. Now, this is a factor of technology. The idea he has is that if you imagine companies like Ford, which were the ruling countries or which were the companies with the largest market share a few years ago, and if you compare them with the companies today having a similar dominance in the market, they employ very, very far fewer people. And so the idea is, and in Silicon Valley that you talked about, Anurag, people are, 10 people making $1 million companies or, touching very high valuations because they're able to do a lot of productive work with fewer and fewer people thanks to technology. Right? So there is a concern. How do we organize if that is a challenge for our organization? There are issues like cybercrime and many others that we have to as a nation think about as well when we think about organization in this case. One answer, in fact, this is by Gary Kasparov. When he lost to Deep Blue in the chess competition, he himself started running a freestyle chess tournament. And he said anybody can participate, a human or a robot. And what he found was that the teams that did well were neither made of humans nor made of robots. They were a combination of human and robots. And so the idea comes that a lot of the things will be augmented. The human individual capabilities need to be augmented by technology. We can do a lot better with technology than without it, and technology can do a lot better with us than without us. At least as of now, that is the paradigm. I don't know how long it lasts, but at least as of now, the idea is that we can augment humans with technology. Having said that, the third thing that we need to think about as a society, if we are thinking how we lead in this new era, is the idea of individual itself. What is the state of the individual or society will continue to be dominant in our thinking. I just mentioned the fear of AI. It's something that is widely talked about. So not to emphasize too much on it, but people are saying there is hardly a task that will not be done better by a robot. If it can write poems well, it can do anything. Right? There will be hardly anything people question. What is it that technology will not do as well as humans will? Go and think about it. There are only few things, if at all, that may not be done well with technology. And that really raises the question of what will humans do? Having said that, there are concerns. I'll give you an example from Verizon, which is one of the mobile service provider in US, many of you may know. It talks about the ill effects of technology. And as I was going through the page, it looked like I was reading a cigarette ad or something. It's really shocking. They say you can have mental health issues, you can have poor sleep, your grades may go down in school, you might feel lonely, you might have issues in your family, you might just not feel... The laundry list of it is endless. Why do we need to use a mobile phone? It raises the question. The idea is there are a lot of downsides on an individual. There might be a lot of things that are negative. If you think about stress from AI replacing humans, that's a very big negative on a large bunch of people today. It's hurting individual health and well-being. Why should it even be the case? So we have to think about the technology's ill effects. Having said that, there are a lot of positive effects of technology, and I think we've discussed some of that. But India's fintech revolution, if we talk about UPI, 300 million people. It's, one of the largest technology adoption, as you would see some of the numbers here. But what it has done is, it has given a lot of people who otherwise didn't have access to credit, and not just access to credit, but also respect. Just the basic respect that they can get money when they need to. was enabled through these UPI systems. I know some of the bankers, some of them may be in the audience, who really missed the opportunity in offering this UPI. As some of you may know, that was offered first to the bankers. But really what it has done is it has changed the lay of the land for 300 million people. That's more than the population of most countries. The respect that they never got because they never had access to financial markets. And so there's a lot of positive that can happen. So considering these, what I identify, and you can sort of read and know more about it, but the idea is that there is a purpose that drives digital transformation, successful digital transformation, and that purpose requires us not to think technology itself, not to think individual, not to think organization alone, but somehow a relationship between the three and how we are transforming it through our latent desire or a latent purpose, which I call is a latent human force that drives certain societies forward because they understand the interactions much better. How do we unravel it? I talk about this scientific approach, and in this scientific approach, what I say is we need to think about three things: what, how, and why. What is it that we need to do when we are thinking about digital transformation? What is it that we actually do? How do we do it? What is the way that the organizations should think about organizing themselves differently? And so I outline a model, in terms of a Davogomo model, which explains how organizations can harness this purpose to do better. And then finally, the eternal question that I think societies will have to think is, why do we digitally transform? Right? Not everything. I know I have friends who say that we don't expose our kids to a lot of technology, and I myself restrict them in many ways, because if you leave them unhurdled or totally unchecked, exposed to technology, a lot of things that they pick up may not be the kind of things that they do. Overexposure is bad. You limit screen time and many other things. The idea is why digital transformation is something that is good. Now, there is a reason, there is an answer why it is good and when it is not. But I think we as a society have to think about those three things: what, how, and why. And like I said, I outlined some of those things, and I look forward to talking more about it as we get to the question and answer. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, Professor. So if you could go next. And as you take the dice, I think this was a very helpful, more macro framework to think about the transformations in our life, and so that we stop playing the catch-up game and we can really leapfrog. Over to you, Som.
Yeah. Thank you, Anurag, and management committee members, distinguished guests, and fellow panelists. Thank you for the opportunity to share my views. Actually, after many years in McKinsey, serving some of the largest IT services and software players, I found my purpose in building what we think would be the first vertical software for the tech services sector, which is now being used by more than 20% of Indian IT to manage their talent supply chain. We call ourselves Prism Force. And my views are shaped by this experience of building something from scratch, enterprise grade, using all the learnings of technology resilience. And in fact, I'm deeply connected to Chennai as well, because this is one of the epicenters of the tech services revolution that India has seen over the last many years, right? In my talk, I'll talk a little bit about AI and its impact. We'll cover a little bit about the impact on jobs and the new opportunities it might create, especially for the services sector, because jobs is one of the big problems that the country faces, right? So we are entering an era of ubiquitous AI. And just like Google democratized access to information, AI has the power and potential to make intelligence far more accessible than what it has been. And what is happening is quite unprecedented. We talk about doubling of the capacity of chips, but what is happening on the AI is it's like a 10 times or 10x kind of impact year after year, and there's no signs of slowing down. The cost of AI tokens, million tokens, is costing today like almost 3% of what it was a year ago. If you look at the compute power and the efficacy of the AI models, it's almost 10x better than what it was last year, right? So net impact of this, the compounding can be enormous, and that would mean that AI would be everywhere. So there is no running away from it. And the gap between what is seen in science fiction versus reality will only go down, right? And this has a big implication on what happens to business and what happens to us as a society and also to us as individuals. So what is likely to happen is that as AI interactions become more and more probably humane, the intelligence and the intuition will almost be an extension of ourselves. So we will almost have a digital being or a digital companion whom we can tap into. And this can erase multiple barriers which exist today in terms of information access, in terms of language barriers, and all of that breakdown can actually spur a lot of innovation, can spur the explosion of human knowledge and intellect, and of course, it will have an impact on productivity and creativity. As entrepreneurs, I can only be an optimist. I see many entrepreneurs here. I don't think there's any other choice. So we have to think about what are the potential possibilities of getting most out of this, right? And especially for a country like ours, where the starting point is quite poor, quite variable. So there's a lot of leapfrogging we can do on the back of this. Having said that, this kind of opportunity can also bring a lot of risks of disruption. And when business depends a lot more on complex AI systems and decision-making systems, a minor fault is no longer just an inconvenience. It can also risk our revenues, our reputation, our market share, and therefore resilience becomes a very important topic. To be honest, personally for me, resilience was important, but when I was building up my startup, what was more important was to build out the product and get time to market fast, get out in the market, get client feedback. And it so happened to us that we won a mandate at a top 3 global IT services player to become their skill management system. And that actually caught me thinking on resilience, right? So they had a lot of asks in terms of business continuity planning, disaster recovery, redundant systems, and so on. So that actually triggered our own journey of creating tech resilient systems. And that helped build a foundation which helped us leapfrog from there. The redundancy has to be there when you talk of building technology. It has to be in our architecture, in the way we think about the business strategy, the way we think about business continuity planning. And in my own personal experience, I've seen that you cannot make it an also-ran. It cannot be the last of your priorities. And if done very well, it can actually help you really leapfrog. One example which I'm intimately familiar with is the IT services industry. I would love to take a few lessons from how the industry has shown a lot of resilience. More importantly, this is also a sector which has played a big role in India's emergence over the last 30-40 years. It has played a big role in our forex reserves. India exports more software than, say, Saudi Arabia exports oil. And to that extent, this is a very, very important sector for India. It also has created by far the largest number of white-collar jobs. And this potentially is also a sector which can see a lot of impact of AI, both negative as well as positive, right? The very fact that we have been able to outsource a lot of jobs from developed economy to India was much on the back of most likely cost and labor arbitrage. Of course, there have been offerings, there have been improvements, there have been patents, but if you take an 80-20 rule, it's a lot to do with the cost arbitrage. Now, what AI is trying to do, is it will hit at the heart of this cost arbitrage, right? Because it's no longer about getting work done by trained engineers. It's getting work done through machines, and likely the outcome would be machines plus the human aspect, which Professor also talked about, and that could come at a much higher level of efficiency. And it so happens again that Chennai is probably exporting 20-25% of Indian IT. So it is at the heart of it. Like many entrepreneurs here, I'm sure, are trying to think about what will it take to win the AI-led services model. And I'm sure something like this, where a disruption happens, new winners emerge. The pecking order can get disturbed, just like many of the Indian players have disturbed the pecking order from the late 80s, 90s. If you look at late 80s, 90s, it was the IBMs, the HPs of the world, which were leaders in the IT services space. India was probably nowhere in the picture, less than probably 5% of the market share. From there, we have taken almost a third of the market share, right? And it's on the back of the global delivery model that we all innovated against. And now it's time for us to think about what will it take to improve our offerings, what will it take to improve the technology arbitrage that we have, given the young population that we have, which is actually an advantage because people can be more native AI trained versus what's happening in the developed economies. And this sector has taken a front seat when it comes to managing change, managing big disruptions, whether it's the dot-com bust after the Y2K boom, whether it's the global financial crisis, the sector has emerged stronger. And I'm sure many leaders, also people who are in this room have played a big role in that. And therefore, I'm a big optimist that we can actually create a lot more jobs, net new jobs, which may not be the jobs of yesterday, may not be so much about testing and say application maintenance, but probably the value is also at the same time shifting towards applications, which would be at the heart of the value creation process and would be at the intersection of vertical and domain knowledge which this sector possesses. So as we have seen, because of DeepSeek and many other alternatives, the crash is happening when it comes to the cost of building foundational models. So there's a likelihood that the value will move from hardware to foundational models to applications. And that's where, again, India, with its tech services industry, with the GCCs that we have an inherent advantage. And we can leapfrog and create a lot more net new jobs out of it. Having said that, there will be some disruptions, but I'm very, very sure entrepreneurs and leaders here and in India would be able to take most out of it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, so. Mr. Manikandan, if you could.
Good afternoon. Usually, if people are listening and listening, the time span to continuously listen is only 40 minutes. And for this session, 40 minutes is over. So now it's a difficult task for me to figure out how to still make it interesting. And so to make it interesting, maybe I'll stand here and talk so that at least you don't fall asleep. I am the odd man out in this crowd. Whenever Captain invites me for this conference, I keep telling Captain that I have never done an MBA course, so I won't put a very fancy presentation, nor I can use any very fancy jargons, which is difficult to understand. So my session is purely going to be a very tech-focused session. I am an engineer by heart. I did my graduation in College of Engineering, Guindy, worked in Microsoft for 7.5 years. Then I started the Amazon Chennai side and then grew that site from 5 to 5,000 people. Worked there for 14 years and then currently I'm heading the Uber Development Center. We have close to 2,000 people there, right? So, thank you. So what I thought in this session, maybe I'll take 10 minutes, is I'll phase it down into 3 things, right? I'm not going to talk about, oh, AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that. I'm sure you have heard enough that AI is doing all these things. The question is, what should I do when AI is doing all these things is the most important thing, because I'm running a firm, I'm running a company, right? So let's focus on that. A little bit about what technology has transformed. Maybe that will be the first 4 to 5 minutes. Then a little bit about AI, what's happening, right? From a pure technologist perspective, right? What are the things which is very important to focus on when you're running an organization. The last one is around academia, right? So we have a lot of colleges in Tamil Nadu, right? We have close to 400 maybe 500 plus engineering colleges, right? So we need to figure out what are those guys going to do after graduating. Every year we are going to, produce more than 1 lakh students, right? So we'll touch base on that. The first one is around technology transformations, right? So when I worked at Amazon, just building a large scale distributed system, right? Where a system can take millions of transactions per second, right? And millions of transactions and whose latency is in milliseconds, right? With 99.999 availability, it's a very, very hard task. We used to hire the best of best engineers. We used to pay them a lot of money, hire the best of best engineers to build those kind of systems. Then what happened is, all this cloud computing came into picture, right? And then they started giving all the APIs. So building those kind of large scale systems today is very easy, right? Because those kind of systems is now become like a commodity. You can just call few APIs, you can build it, right? Today, 10 years back, if you say that, hey, I want to store petabytes of data. I'm going to receive petabytes of data per day. Can you store it? You need like a 100-member engineering team to build that kind of a system. Today, it's easy. You can either use elastic block storage, go store it. If I want to use millions of computers, put it in EC2, you can do it, right? So those kind of transformations happen. So that's the first shift. The second shift is, now that you are able to make those things very easy, what happened was the volume of data kept on increasing. When the volume of data keeps on increasing, right, the whole data analysis, data intelligence came into picture, right? So at that time, whenever I go to any conference, the topic is data intelligence or data analytics. There are so many conferences that happen, just the focus is on data, right? And then what do we do with data and all those things, right? That went through a phase. Now, in the last 1.5, 2 years, there's a lot of things happening about AI, right? AI is doing this, AI is able to do that. But the way I look at it is, in next 2 years, that will also become like a commodity. Today, if you are running an organization and if you want to build a digital first organization or if you want to leverage a technology for your organization, you can actually build an AI-based solution much faster than how you could have built a few years back, because you actually don't need that many skilled engineers to build that kind of thing, because all those algorithms are available as a commodity for you, right? So this is the transformation that is happening. So now with this transformation, if I am running an organization, what is important for me? What is important for you is, how fast can I build a system? Because I have all these things as commodities, can I build a system very fast? Answer is yes, you should be able to build a very fast. Do we need so many engineers? You actually don't need so many engineers. You can just build really good end-to-end systems, very few engineers. The second is, yes, I built a system, I put it on production, right? How is it working? The reliability and the scalability of the systems is extremely, extremely important. And how much money I am spending on this, commodities and API integrations. You get into that, right? And that is also very, very important, because initially the expectations of customers is different, but once they get used to your product, the expectation of customers is different. Few years back, when people are using Uber app, when they click a button, maybe in another 5 minutes car will come. People will say, "Innappa, magic mari irukke. Button click na car vandichupa veetukku munadi appadinu." Today, if they click a button, even if you cannot even wait for 10 to 15 seconds. Where is my driver? Why is the car not coming? Right? So the expectation has changed so much for the same product. So the reliability, all those things is extremely, extremely important. When you are running a system, just in terms of Uber, I'll share a few numbers. We are running a system where we have close to 7 million drivers. We are doing close to 25 million trips a day, right? When you do 25 million trips a day, let's take we are operating in 10,000 cities, 70 countries. Let's say a very small city like Varanasi. Let's say we did some config change. The entire system is running on a single code base. Even though we are running in 10,000 cities, 70 countries, right? It's running on a single code base. Let's say you make a config change and then one city is broken. How do you identify that the city is broken? Maybe in Varanasi we are doing like 2,000 trips a day. Where is 2,000 trips compared to 25 million trips in a day? How do you figure out the anomaly that is happening? But for that city is very important. So you actually figure out what are those core problems for which you need the right set of technology and go solve those problems. The focus should not be like, okay, I be AI, now let me take AI and figure out what to do. The focus should be there. What is the problems that you need to solve? Then what is the technology that I need to use to go and solve the problem, right? So that is one piece. And if you just take AI into picture, right? So as I said, AI is now becoming like a commodity, right? In another 2 years, we'll very soon go ahead and figure out that integrating with AI, even now integrating with AI and call bunch of APIs is much faster. Maybe it's slightly costly and cost will keep on reducing, month over month. But the important thing is, what is the problem are we solving? One aspect that we always do, of course, a lot of my experience is purely on product companies because I work purely on product companies, is first of all, pick a problem which you think the problem statement will hold good even after few years or 2-3 years. Because a lot of times we go and chase problems. We go solve the problem. By the time you solve the problem statement doesn't hold good. And then you go figure out what is the next problem. You go solve the problem, but by the time problem statement doesn't hold good. Right? I'll give you one example. We took a problem statement where we said, hey, we need to provide transportation at a very, very low cost, a reliable transportation, safer transportation, predictable transportation at a very, very low cost. That's the problem statement. Will this problem statement hold good after 3 years? Yes. Will this problem statement hold good after 10 years? Yes. Right? So now when you take a problem statement like this, right? When you say at a very low cost, then you're talking about something like a high capacity vehicle where you put multiple people inside a single vehicle so that you move around from A to B and they pay a very low cost because you're putting multiple people in a single bus. Right? But that is not an easy thing to do. Just running a bus system is not a lot of people will think that, oh, what's the problem? Why don't we just run a bus system? There are very few companies which are actually profitable in running a bus system. It has a lot of good graph theory problems. Where should be the bus stops? What should be the routes? Where should be the bus stops? Where should I place the bus stops such that the customers need to walk not more than 500 meters? right? How do I make sure that the maximum utilization of the bus? How do I make sure that I utilize the drivers to the maximum, right? So there are so many different things. What should be the speed at which the driver should drive? What kind of information I should show in the driver app so that driver drives in the right speed so that he can get to the stop at the right timing, right? Then only reliability will come into picture. So there are so many interesting problems. Now you go and say, okay, now that we have all these problems, how do I leverage what kind of technology to use? So for a bunch of our routing, we use bunch of AI algorithms to figure out what should be the routing. Figure out the right routing so that we can utilize the maximum utilization on the bus, maximum utilization on the drivers, right? So that is an approach that we usually take. Sometimes it may take 1 year, sometimes it may take 2 years. We actually experimented this in Cairo. It took almost 2-3 years for us to figure out how to run a profitable business just on a high capacity vehicle. Right? Once you know that technology is scaled for one thing, and then you go ahead and expand. Now we are launched in Delhi, we are launching in other metro cities in India. Right? So that is something, right? Focus on the problem statement and then trace back, because all the technologies that you have are all commodities which you can easily integrate and solve those problems. Right? Then coming to the last one on academia. Now that with all these things have changed, what should happen on the academia side? One is skilling people in the current organization, right? Which he covered, right? But what I'm going to talk about is what should happen in the academia. We are still, learning Java, C++, but then we are talking about AI and DeepSeek, right? Should the academia change super fast? Right? So the important thing is, it's not about academia should change very fast. Even if you change the academia course, just to train all the teachers in India in the new curriculum, and then they teaching the students itself is a 2-3 year process. By the time technology itself will again change. And the expectation is also, academia will always teach only the foundations. Academia is not going to teach the vertical depth, right? You learn the foundations in academia and you build expertise on the vertical depth. That is left to you to go build the expertise. If you do that, then you will be successful. Right? A lot of people are talking about, hey, will there be jobs? I can tell you now, just in Uber, where we are almost in the top 5 percentile of the highest paid, company in India, we have more than 200 openings. We don't have candidates. Yesterday we were putting a plan to say whether it will take 6 months or 8 months to hire 200 people. Right? It is not about whether there will be jobs. The question is about, do you have the right skill set for the required job? That is the most important thing. Right? And there is a difference about, 2 years back coding was so important, right? There is a difference about I know coding versus I can write the best algorithm and I can write the best code. If I just go to a browser and type, google.com or uber.com or amazon.in, if I type enter, if the web page takes more than 2 seconds to load, the customer will immediately open another tab and go to the next site. So you are going to lose your customers in seconds. So we need engineers who write the best code. We don't need engineers who know to write code. Same thing with AI. We don't need engineers who says, oh, I know AI. There are 1 million people who says, I know AI. But there are very few people who says, okay, I can build the right model. I know how to tune the accuracy of the model. I know how to measure the accuracy of the model. How do I fine tune the model? And then make sure that it's operating at a 95th percentile or a 98th percentile and reduce the error rate. If you have that kind of a skill set, jobs are always open. Right? And not just in Uber. There are, a lot of my colleagues are in all big companies like, Google and Amazon and, Microsoft. A lot of companies have openings today. So there is no dearth of jobs. It's the lack of skill set, right? And for the lack of skill set, if we are thinking that, we need to wait for the curriculum to change, we are just delegating something, saying that, something needs to say so that I will benefit from that. It is your responsibility, because those things need not change. Those things, what they are today is good enough. We need to build expertise ourselves because we have enough things outside where you can go and build the vertical expertise. Right. So with this, I will stop here, and then you can take a few questions from Anu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manikandan. How much time? So as you might have seen during the entire session, there was a constant flow of questions. So I think in keeping with spirit of tech session, we have big data here to process when it comes to questions. Okay, perfect. So I think one common theme which I saw, and I think builds on what you were saying, we as individuals, people in the room, what can we do right now? We all know that AI is coming and there are things happening and there are things outside of control, but us as individuals, what should we be doing on a day-to-day basis to get the right skills to make sure that we put ourselves in the best position? Maybe, so we start with you and we go in that order.
Sure. I think clearly what is happening is a lot of information is out there, not just information, even intelligence is there at the tap of a button. I think the only thing which we need to do is to have a very, very curious and a curious mind and a learning mindset. Irrespective of what we learn, like almost half of it or probably even more than that would get would get out of vogue probably in the next 12 to 18 months. And as Mani was also saying, right, it's our adaptability and how well we learn to learn new things. And sooner or later we'll start seeing that that will be one big aspect, right? Learnability will become a big aspect when it comes to UX screening. It's not just about skills of yesterday, but how can we learn when new things come up.
Thank you. Professor.
Well, I think that's always been the question, what do we do? We've often framed it from a perspective of skills being the most important determinant to our well-being, which has been the case largely during the industrial era. And what that means was the more you know what to do, the more you will do well in society. I think that is going to shift if we especially are thinking younger children. A lot of people are concerned about what do we educate, teach them about. And I think the idea is if you are more or better at thinking, and like you mentioned, curiosity, but if you are able to think better rather than do better, that's a paradigm change in my view that's going to happen over the next 15-20 years.
Got it. Thank you.
So my thought is, today I'm sure from the morning we all heard a lot of jargons, AI, ML, deep learning, machine learning. The easiest litmus test for ourselves is how many of them can really differentiate these four things and say what is the difference between AI, ML, deep learning and machine learning. If we can really write it down that this is the difference, that means we really know that with good knowledge. There is a difference between I know at a high level versus I actually know. And we all should be in a person where we say we actually know. We are in a city where we are in Chen.ai, Chennai. We are in Chennai, where in Chennai everybody should actually know what is AI. Right? If we do that, we all will definitely succeed.
Thank you. And I think just on this topic, one thing which I have personally found quite helpful, it's probably the only technology which we have seen which can teach you itself how you should use it. So very practically, just download ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Gemini, whatever it is on your phone. Go and type a simple prompt to say that, okay, I want to make good use of AI to do X, Y, Z, right? To learn to set up a business, etc. I don't know AI, tell me how should I use it? And it will tell you step by step that what you should actually do. So in a way, it's actually it's giving the power of passing the education on to yourself. So I think very practically just download the apps, make sure that you play around with it and start to use it. I think the other question, which probably again ties back to, or a set of questions were around the whole separating the hype from reality. And I think it went back to your, what you were also saying, Mani, that it's AI is a hammer and we're looking for a nail. Okay, what can I solve with AI versus actually coming at it? In your examples, all three of you, right? What has been a good example of AI being used to solve a problem, which maybe might have been very difficult to solve otherwise? And again, in your experience, you have seen that, it being solved and AI has really done a wonderful job to solve it.
So I'll give you one real example so that you can understand it very easily. The power of AI. Let's put a statement. Here is the line which says, I am trying to fit a ball inside the bag, but I could not fit it because it is big. What is it referring to in the second line? I am trying to fit a ball inside a bag, but I could not fit it because it is big. It refers to ball. I am putting the same line. I am trying to fit a ball inside the bag, but I could not fit it because it is small. Now, what does it refer to? Bag. This change of a word which comes later in the statement, but understanding the context of the statement and then changing the behavior of what that word means is a breakthrough. Right? Same line, but the same word represented two different things. So, a word in context of a line in context of a paragraph in context of a chapter in context of a book in context of the overall ecosystem will change. Right? To that extent, if we understand for what kind of things we need to use AI, then we'll really figure out for which problem statement we can go and solve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can add. See, the fact is the space is changing so fast that even if today I am not able to give a good answer, very likely probably in 12, 18 months that will change, right? So to that extent, I think asking the right questions is half the problem. In my own experience, we also use a lot of AI in our own software, but we have seen when it comes to very specific vertical applications, generic AI models don't give a good answer. It's still 50-60% accurate. But if you are really building an enterprise class product, the answer has to be at least 90-95% accurate. And that's the opportunity in front of us, right? How can we have our own proprietary data? How can we actually build models? How can we train models so that you get to that 90-95% level where you can build applications which can be enterprise grade? Having said that, even that mode can go away, right? So the pace at which things are changing, that mode can go away. It's just a matter of time. But at the same time, so I met the Perplexity founder, and he actually studied from IIT Madras, right? Like 2017 passed out, and his ambitions to beat Google, right? Of many other things. So that's the opportunity in front of us, right? There's no incumbency out here. There's no advantage just because you are Google. Someone else can come and even a 2-year-old startup can beat the behemoth that you have built, right? And that's a big opportunity. So especially we as in India, because our starting point is so variable, right? So far away. If we are ambitious, I think we can beat anyone. And DeepSeek shows us that probably even the cost is not that high to build something of our own. So we are just constrained by the ambitions, and especially entrepreneurs here or potential entrepreneurs. I think we are just constrained by the ambitions and the aspirations that we have. An entrepreneur has to create the resources to generate what reach he has. He or she has.
Thank you. Prof, any successful example you have seen?
Well, I think it goes back to the earlier discussion of what is AI. I think it's a very abused word. To me, artificial intelligence is not something that, unless you pick a certain time when the convergence of algorithm became faster or quicker and you attribute that to the AI, even regressions are considered AI. And so, if you take my advice, I think most of these terms are just very, very superficially used. There is not much that you could not do otherwise that you can. Yes, the computing capabilities help. Yes, a large amount of hardware and everything helps, but I think the idea that you have a problem and you think the best way to solve it is probably the best paradigm to think about. And it can be done in so many different ways, and then one approach becomes better than the other very, very quickly. There is not so much to AI more than the buzz it has created in my mind.
Oh, thank you, Prof. And I think makes a lot of sense, and it actually ties quite well with another theme of questions which we have got, is as companies, and we have a lot of representatives from companies also, small, medium enterprises, how should we think about investing in technology? Of course, AI is a big theme of it, but how should we think about investing given the upfront costs and to the point that there may be benefits which we can do without AI or without a new technology? We can even solve it, quite honestly, many times you just employ people and it solves it, but how, as an entrepreneur, how should you think about balancing the investment?
Let me make a comment on that, since that just relates. I wrote a couple of years ago in one of the HR magazines this idea of unabashed excellence. And how I define it is that as more and more AI becomes stronger and everything becomes great, it opens up the possibility for managers and doers to be excellent. And I think if some of you are in this room, just think clearly what is it. If you are a marketing person, you are a HR person, you are an engineer, you are a doctor, or whoever you are, and I teach almost all of them. I think when you think of what is it that will be excellent in your domain, that pursuit of excellence wasn't really feasible many years ago, but it is now, because the technologies and AI related technologies have become tremendously strong. So if you want to take one message, just think of excellence in your domain of work and redefine it, I guess. Because you can. Many of the previous generations probably could not even think of what excellence would mean, but many of the young, even entrepreneurs and workers, are able to redefine what was previously thought even impossible to do. That's the only thing I would advise everyone to think about. Forget AI and everything. Think about it. It's a great technology. I'm not saying it's not. But it's not going to change the basic principles of human organization and work and your well-being and how well you do in life, which is how well you excel in whatever you are supposed to be doing.
So, from how do you think about investing?
Right. As an organization, I think, and with every startup is generally resource constrained, right? So you have to take this distance day in, day out. I think it all starts with, to your point, right? Like, what are the big business priorities? And AI is not a means in itself, like it's a means to an end. The end is to actually solve the business problem at hand. I think for SMEs, MSMEs, I would almost ask you to create some sort of a skunk work teams, right? A combination of folks from business, from technology. You need like tinkerers who can just play around with stuff, like who are passionate at building something from scratch. And if anything, the cost of building these models, or as Mani also said, right? Like some of them are available on the tab, right? The cost is actually going down and going down very, very fast. So you should not bother too much about cost to start with, and start with some pilots. And then see the promise of those pilots, and the ones which show the promise, like then you scale it up, right? You can start small, because if anything, the barrier on the cost side, the barrier on the information arbitrage is actually going down. But if you don't do anything, then likely that you'll miss a bus. So it's important for all of us to tinker and at least do something about it. And one way to do could be to create a skunk of teams, which is a cross-functional team across business, technology, people who have worked on the AI side. Even if they have not built models from scratch, at least they know how to fine-tune it and start doing something with it.
Thank you, so Mani.
So there are few areas where it is already clear that if we are going to invest money on AI, it is actually going to save money on the overall cost. For example, if you take customer support, today we have enough good LLM models where we don't need 1,000 or 2,000 customer support agents. We can actually handle those volume with just 500 people. So even though we are investing on AI, you are going to save on the overall cost. There are few things where we are going to do a lot of experimentation, thinking that, hey, if we leverage AI, maybe the outcome is much better than how we are doing manually. For those places, I will go back to the way he said, where we'll do some experimentations, figure out it works, and then you scale bigger. In both these cases, the most important thing is when you are doing all these things, make sure you have a person who really understands AI and do those things. Lot of times, what we have seen is, we have a person who partially knows AI, they try to do something, and if it fails, or they do it in a half-baked way, because of which either the cost is so high, or they are not getting the desired output, because of which we think the experiment is a failure. So it's extremely, extremely important to have the right person who understands the tech really well to go and do this to really see the success of it.
Thank you. I think there were a couple of other themes, and maybe I'll summarize the themes and also start to wrap up this session as we think about it. I think one, there's a question on what are the risks associated with it, and I think we have spoken about some of it implicitly already, that we should use it as means to an end and not just try and throw it wherever it's there. But I think more, again, as an organization and as individuals, what are the risks we should watch out for? And it can be as simple as there can be hallucinations, have human in the loop, to something larger. And I think the second interesting question is also, there is a trade-off. For example, if we as a company or as a country think about borrowing technology which somebody else is building and use it. For example, I'll use existing models and work on it versus our own technical IP. So there is a trade-off between speed and creating long-term differentiation. How should we think about that? So, and maybe we use this opportunity to get closing thoughts also. Maybe we'll start in the opposite order. Mani, with you.
So, I don't think we should be too much tied about, we should use only things that we build. When we are in the early stage of the things, leverage as much technology as of whatever is available. First, see whether your time to market is faster, right? And then whatever business you try to run, you are able to run it in a profitable fashion. If you think that, yes, there is a product market fit, and then when you are trying to scale, you figure out whether you should have your own models and other stuff. So my recommendation is, we don't need to be too much tied about what technology we are using. Leverage whatever technology we have. Really figure out whether our product market fit is working well. That is the actual end success for us. If that succeeds, then let's fine tune all the technological pieces for cost optimization, IP optimization, and we can take care of that.
Thank you. Prof.
Well, you said speed or long-term efficiency. I think the biggest risk that I see in AI is copying others. And I think one is this technology is very sharp. And so when when I was in US for the longest period of time, the biggest advertisement for AI talked about make these investments and we will remove so many people easily from your company. You will save so much on your healthcare costs and medical insurance. There, the capitalistic logic makes it very clear why AI is good. And the AI is good because it reduces your manpower costs. I think what we as a nation probably have to be wary of is just copying the same logic which might have worked in a Western country somewhere and thinking that that same logic will be great for us as well. So that's the risk, but again, you just need to do something and not ignore it. So if the start means that you copy, that's fine. But I don't think that should be the final end goal for us to achieve.
Thank you. So
I'll keep it short. I think the biggest risk is not doing anything because probably as an entrepreneur only we can be guided by the possibilities. I think the possibilities and the opportunities are immense. If we don't do anything about it and think only of risks, then that's the biggest risk.
okay, thank you. So I think we are past time, and it's a fascinating topic, and we could go on and on. But maybe I'll try and quickly summarize. I think few things we have spoken. Starting with, there needs to be a purpose behind doing whatever we are doing, and not just think about new technology or AI just for the sake of it. Linking it again that, we should come at it maybe from a customer-backed business problem which we're trying to solve, and where AI or any other technology could be the solution. Again, as individuals, just be curious, play around with technology, learn on a day-to-day basis, use the tool itself to make sure that we are learning. And as businesses, I think definitely invest in it, but do it in a sensible, bootstrap manner. Look at the technology already available, do it in an iterative manner where you can build on it, and you don't need to go and make huge investments unless you're sure how will you actually use it. So I think it was a very good session. I'm sure you all will be caught by people offline for further discussions, but thank you so much. Thank you for this discussion.